What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Mafia podcast, NBA edition. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and as always, I'm here with my co host, the Fantasy Caveman. We are in the middle of our NBA mini-series where we are going through each and every roster in the NBA. We're recapping their 2019-2020 season and then previewing their upcoming off season. Right now, we're in the middle of the playoff teams that have been eliminated. So we are talking about the Dallas Mavericks, who were the seventh seed in the Western Conference. They were 43 and 32 this season, which I think was surprising to a lot of people. Rick Carlisle was their head coach in his 11th season. They ended up getting outed in the first round in 6 games against the Los Angeles Clippers, a very hard-fought series there. Luka had some pretty magical moments in his first playoff series, but we'll go through some of their point and other category leaders here. Luka led the way with 28.8 points. Behind him, you had Kristaps Porzingis with 20.4 points, Tim Hardaway with 15.8, Seth Curry with 12.4. Trey Burke was technically behind them with 12 points, but only played in 8 games. Rebounding leaders, Porzingis at 9.5, Luka behind him with 9.4, Dorian Finney-Smith in third with 5.7, and you also had Dwight Powell with 5.7. Their assist leader, really the only one of note, was Porzingis, 8.8. Then you had several guys that were below 4. Steals-wise, DeLon Wright was 1.2. Trey Burke technically had over 1 with 1.1. Luka with 1. Blocks leaders, you had Kristaps Porzingis with 2. Maxi Kleber with 1.1. What notes do you have on the Mavericks and who impressed you this year?
Obviously, I'll save Luka for you because we have to talk about Luka with the Mavericks. But if you're talking about the Mavericks, obviously you have Luka and Kristaps Porzingis, but then you got to really look at who else contributed for them. I like a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr., who I was looking at him. I was surprised that he was only 18th in 3-pointers attempted this season. He averaged just over 7 3-pointers attempted per game, which I actually thought he was a little bit higher than 18, because it seemed like those are literally the only shots that he took were 3-pointers. But he had a solid year, averaged the 16 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and for as many threes as he took, he shot 40% from 3 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's above, I believe the league average is around 38.
Yep.
So he was a little bit above the league average for 3-pointers percentage. But, he was their clear number 3 option. Is he the number 3 option on a championship team? Not a chance in hell. But
oh, that's rude. Wow.
not rude, but I think he's definitely definitely an above average guard who, with his scoring ability, fits pretty well on this team. I think when you have you want to surround Luka with as many shooters as you can, so he can get it to them and knock down shots. But I'm sure you're ready to talk about Luka here. How specifically was he impressive?
Luka was terrible this year.
It's terrible, man.
Yeah, no. I've said before, I think Luka's the best player in the NBA right now, and obviously he's only going to be 21 next season, so I think he still has some improvements he needs to make, which is kind of scary. His 3-point percentage was terrible. It was only around 32%, so he can make an improvement there. But overall, 46% from the field. So actually overly pretty efficient overall, considering how effective he was with his 2-point percentage. But, the guy's almost average a triple-double. I wouldn't be surprised if he has several seasons in the future where he does average a triple-double. There's not much you can say about him. Offensively, he was very impressive. Defensively, he is not very strong. That's an area where I really hope he improves in the future. But I mean, the Mavericks have a great foundation here with Luka and Porzingis, who both seem to really gel when they are on the court together. So I think that's a really promising young duo. Porzingis is still only 24, so both of these guys are really young. That's a nice core. I think they just need to add a few pieces around them, and we could be talking about a championship team here. I think they were ahead of where most people expected them to be. I mean, being the seventh seed was, I mean, it doesn't sound overly impressive, but they had a great record at 43 and 32. It's not like they snuck in. They were comfortably a playoff team, and they were only a few wins away from realistically being in the top four. So when you look at the difference between them and the Denver Nuggets, they only had 3 less wins than the Denver Nuggets. So they were that close to being a 3 seed. So you had a few pieces here. We'll see what happens with Tim Hardaway, but even if he's there or not, I think you need to add another piece there. And they're another team. I don't want to say they struggled defensively. We talked about the Trailblazers before, who were one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. The Mavericks were kind of average, and if they're able to take that next step up, I think they could be one of the best teams in the West. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to with this team. So let's go over their current roster and some of their upcoming free agents here. A lot of these names we've mentioned on the depth chart already, but at the 1, you have Luka. Behind him, you have Jalen Brunson and Trey Burke. DeLon Wright's also there, a veteran. At the 2, you have Tim Hardaway and Seth Curry. Seth Curry is another guy we didn't really talk about, but I thought he carved out a nice role as a three-point shooter. He shot, it was a high percentage, 45% from 3. So he was very efficient from there, and I think he proved that he can have a nice role, especially if he's coming off the bench. Almost kind of like a JJ Redick role, I'll say, a three-point specialist off the bench. So they had him behind Hardaway at the 2. At the 3, Dorian Finney-Smith is their starter. They have Justin Jackson behind him. At the 4, Porzingis is their starter. Maxi Kleber plays the 4. A little bit of 5. They're playing a little smaller, but Michael Kidd-Gilchrist was also on the roster as well last year on their depth chart.
On the roster, like, I don't even think I remember seeing. Did he even suit up for him?
He played. It was only a few games, I believe. I think they might have played him in the bubble a little bit, but he's on the roster and depth chart. So I was like, okay. I mean, I guess I'll bring him up. I mean, what a bust that he's been for overall in the NBA. But
that's the thing. He played in 13 games for him.
13 games for him.
And averaged. and didn't even average a point. He averaged.
Didn't even average a point.
9.
And not good.
And he shot he shot 30% from the field.
Gosh, poor guy. He was always a strong defender, but he never put it together offensively. At the 5, we have Dwight Powell starting, and then they brought on Willie Cauley-Stein, who was coming off the bench for him. I've always liked Willie Cauley-Stein, so I think he's a nice depth piece at the 5 spot there for him. I'll mention some of their free agents, and Caveman can tell you what he thinks they should do. Tim Hardaway, who you already mentioned, is going to be an interesting one. He has a player option for this upcoming season, so that'll be interesting to monitor. Kind of just, I'll say an interesting note that I've been reading is with COVID, it's expected that the NBA salary cap is going to go down for next season. So a lot of people are thinking, and it depends if it's for next season or the season after, but there's a lot of people that think guys are going to want to delay going into free agency because teams won't have as much money to spend. So if that's the case, you could see Tim Hardaway opt in for this season, then maybe look to get a long-term deal after that, or if it's the other way around, you may see him try to get a big deal now. So that's just kind of a side point to mention with a lot of these guys with player options is they have a financial decision to make, and it'll be interesting to monitor. Behind him, there's not too many big names. Courtney Lee, who was coming off their bench, a veteran guard, J.J. Barea, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Trey Burke's a free agent. Then you had two-way contracts, who I always bring up for Caveman. Antonius Cleveland and Josh Reeves. And I think I did that name some fantastic justice, so I am very happy with that. I think that's all the notes that I have. Willie Cauley-Stein, who I mentioned as well, actually has a player option for this year. The player option would only be for $2.2 million, so don't know if he's necessarily going to pick that up unless he just really loved playing in Dallas, because he can probably get more on the open market. He was kind of lost a few years ago and took a mid-level exception, but I think at this point he can get more than $2.2 million. Not saying he's worth tons and tons, but he can most likely get a better deal than that on the open market. So what do you think, Caveman? Who do you think they need to retain, or any notes here?
Oh yeah, you did mention. Did you mention Michael Kidd-Gilchrist from under free agents? Because
I did. You can't forget Michael Kidd-Gilchrist.
can't forget Kidd-Gilchrist. I mean, you're looking at it. I mean, Courtney Lee, nobody cares at this point. He kind of just exists somehow. JJ Barea. I mean, they have some decent depth at the point guard position. Obviously, a lot of it's gonna. I mean, I think Trey Burke is a guy. He really came on in the bubble for him, kind of. So I think he might have played his way into getting some kind of offer from them. I don't know. That's gonna be the interesting thing that I'm curious to see with the bubble, is all these guys that didn't do anything until the bubble hit, and then they have a good bubble performance. How is that going to affect teams thinking in the offseason when they're looking to pay these guys? Like, how much of a factor do you put in their bubble performance if they didn't have a solid season overall? So I think Trey Burke's one of those guys that, what did his bubble performance do for him? So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. Tim Hardaway is probably the most interesting name on this list, obviously. You'd look at $17.7 million. I mean, he's a decent defender, and he shoots the three at a pretty good clip for how many threes he takes. $17 million. I think he's a guy that if he opts out of that deal, he's probably in that $17 to $20 million range in terms of what he would command on the open market. So, like you said, the whole thing with COVID and players not deciding to test free agency, that might be a factor here. But I mean, if I had to guess whether he picks up his option or not, I think he does. I think he fits pretty well with this team that's constructed right now. So I would kind of like to see them retain him. He's probably the only name of note. I mean, like you mentioned with Cauley-Stein, I don't expect him to pick up that option. I think even as a solid veteran center, I think he'll probably command like in the 8 to 10 range. On the market, probably get like a 3 or 4 year deal for like 38 to 45 million, so somewhere in that range. So I don't expect him to be back with them next season. So, but yeah, those are Hardaway and Cauley-Stein are really the only ones that really are of note here.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a pretty unexciting class for them as a whole, especially if Tim Hardaway just decides to opt in for next season. Kind of makes their off-season less interesting. So we'll go over to their off-season needs and who we think they need to target in the draft. So once again, I'll let you start it off this time.
Oh, thank you so much.
I don't want to take all your names. I felt bad in the other episodes.
You do take my names. I mean, I have a couple of things. I think the first need, I think, would be you need to surround Luka with some more shooters, especially since at this point in his career, and obviously Luka can improve from 3-point range, and there's not really many other places but up for him to go in terms of 3-point percentage. But if you think he could surround Luka with some more 3-point shooting, I mean, Tim Hardaway was their only consistent, reliable guy that could hit threes for him last year. I mean, Seth Curry could, but Seth Curry didn't really play enough of a role. I think you need a guy that's going to play a lot of minutes and hit threes. Seth Curry just doesn't play enough minutes. And then also, I think not that it matters this much now, but I think you need to going forward. I think you need to kind of look at maybe some more playmakers and kind of take a little bit of pressure off of Luka. I think if you take a little bit of pressure off Luka on the offensive end in terms of distributing and whatnot, I think that could help lead him to becoming a better defender on the defensive end. I mean, we were talking about this a while back, but Luka in terms of rating was one of the worst defensive players in the league. Like, it's not just he wasn't that good. He was literally one of the worst. I think I said something. He was like 300th or some insanely hot triple digit horrible defender. So I think if you can surround him with some kind of playmaking, so you can take a little bit of pressure off of him. Looking into the draft and free agency, and we mentioned this when we talked about the Blazer pod, but DeMar DeRozan, I think, would be a really good fit in this. He just seems like the type of player that would thrive in a Rick Carlisle system. Mm-hmm. I think he would. He's a decent, and I think DeMar DeRozan is a little bit underrated as a passer. I think he showed that with San Antonio this season. I think he does a decent job at distributing the ball. Not that. Let's be real. When I say playmaking, I don't mean just like totally take the ball out of Luka's hands. Because when the game's on the line or in all critical moments, Luka Doncic is going to be the one with the ball, and that's how it should be. But if you can just, for some of the game, if you could just take a little bit of pressure off of him, running the offense, and he can just kind of not saying take a back seat, but kind of play off the ball and kind of work on his 3-point shot a little bit. Another free agent name before I talk about a couple of draft guys, Justin Holiday. Boy, would that be a fit. I know it sounds like a broken record because I feel like Justin Holiday, anybody that needs a win or anybody needs like a 3-AD win or looking into free agency, like Justin Holiday is the name that pops up. I think he's probably been mentioned in almost every single pod that we've done so far, and we mentioned Justin Holiday. I mean, he's another guy that I think, he's very versatile defender, which is what the Mavericks need. I feel they need a guy that can defend 1 through 4, and I think Justin Holiday is a top end, probably one of the best defenders in this free agent class. So, and then talking about the draft, kind of going a couple of different routes here. Josh Green, I think, is a guy that I think would work pretty well in this system. I mean, in my opinion, and I love me some Josh Green. He's probably my favorite player in this draft. And then you're talking if what you say is true, and their biggest need being a wing player who can kind of defend. I think Josh Green, in my opinion, is probably the best 3-and-D defender in this draft class. And so, and he has a decent shot. He might have to work on it a little bit, but if the Mavericks want to go the defensive route, I mean, Josh Green is a guy that can realistically be there for him, and he's a guy that's been. And I mentioned this to you, a couple days ago, and it was really surprising. Josh Green has really fallen down on draft boards for some reason that I don't know what I'm missing or what I'm not quite understanding, but he's a guy that could realistically be there for them at that spot. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a few different ways they can attack this offseason. Obviously, Tim Hardaway is going to have a big impact on that, whether he's with them or not. One of the names you mentioned, playmakers, that's kind of interesting that's been connected to them, and there's been some rumors that they want him, is Cole Anthony to play in the backcourt with Luka.
Okay.
I think that would be really interesting if he fell all the way to 18, or maybe they trade up a little bit to get him. I don't see him slipping to 18, but I think that would be really interesting. Another name that I've seen, if you're looking in that kind of 2 to 3 spot, is RJ Hampton, who's fallen down some draft boards based on, we haven't gotten to see him much since high school. He played overseas a little bit, but he is one of the top recruits. So those are two names that I've seen out there. I personally think that they need to go in that 3-and-D direction with that first round pick, like you mentioned a few names. I brought up Sadiq Bey in almost every single one as well.
Yep.
I just think he's from day one is going to be a solid 3-and-D player. Is he ever going to be a superstar? Probably not, but I think that he serves a role. Another direction they could go in is, I do think they'll need some big man depth if Willie Cauley-Stein ends up not being with the team. I'm also not overly impressed with Dwight Powell, so I think you could try to replace him. So that puts you in the range of like Vernon Carey and Precious Achiuwa if you wanted to replace one of those big
Yeah.
guys. Don't know if that's what they need to do with their first round pick, but they could go in that direction. The veterans that I had Justin Holiday and DeMar DeRozan as well. Those were two names that I had, and I think both of those guys would make sense. And specifically DeMar DeRozan, that's a guy
But
that launches this team into, okay, can this team win a championship? I mean,
I
maybe,
mean, I don't
especially.
know if I would. I mean, honestly, that makes them a top contender in the West. And funny you mentioned Dwight Powell, because thank you for because I skipped it when you talk about season leaders. Dwight Powell led the team in plus minus at plus 4.9. So
Wow, that's surprising.
all your hating on Dwight Powell is not justified.
Wow, he was the leader.
Just cause I was curious. So Porzingis, I mean, all their stars were good. Porzingis was plus 4.7, and then Luka was plus 4.1. So, but the Dwight Powell, that was interesting. When I saw that, I was like, the Dwight Powell, like, okay. But for all the hating, how do you feel now? You hated on the Dwight Powell so much. You just you just trashed Dwight Powell, and there
I
he is.
trashed him.
And there he is. You said you weren't impressed with him, and there he is, leading the team in plus minus. So,
I mean, I just think he's solid. I mean, if this team has championship aspirations, I mean, I would aim higher. Either way, they need depth. I mean, if Willie Cauley-Stein's gone, I don't think Dwight Powell is going to play 48 minutes for you every single night. I mean, his defensive rating was solid. I mean, he's not like Daniel Tice for me, who's very underwhelming offensively, but he's one of the highest rated defensive centers in the league. Dwight Powell is pretty solid, but either way, I think they need some depth. That's why I don't think it makes sense for them to go out and get a guy in the draft. I think they have other needs to address. I mean, if I was going to list out their needs, that would probably be like their third need, maybe. So they may not even address it this offseason. Dwight Powell will play, 25 minutes or so for you, but they're going to need other guys to fill in those minutes realistically. Another guy I had, if they wanted some big man depth, Myers Leonard has been a pretty solid big man. I think he could play some valuable minutes for them as well. So for me personally, though, it's still down to that 3-and-D guy. And it's funny. It seems like a lot of these playoff teams, that's their major need. And with three-point shooting being so abundant in the NBA today, I'm surprised that more teams, especially these playoff teams, don't have that position solidified. And I think that's the difference between some of these mid-tier playoff teams versus the upper level ones, is you start to see a more elite 3-and-D guys and a more emphasis on defense. But DeMar DeRozan, who I didn't talk about much, I think that's one of the best fits. You mentioned he's not the strongest defender, but I like his playmaking from the 2 or 3 as well. I mean, he averaged over 5 assists this year. So to have that guy playing the 3 for you, I think would be really valuable. And could you imagine, too, if Tim Hardaway opts into this season, having Luka, Hardaway, DeRozan and Porzingis. I mean, that's pretty legitimate. Dwight Powell's fine at the 5 then. It doesn't even matter.
Then you would like Dwight Powell.
Then it doesn't even matter if Dwight Powell's there. You can put me at center. No, you can't do that.
No,
But
you can't do that.
but yeah, then you talk about their bench and they have Seth Curry. I mean, I think that would be really intriguing. I don't think they'll retain Trey Burke personally. I think he's gonna, not that he'll command a huge salary, but Jalen Brunson was their backup point guard. Not a name a lot of people know, but he was actually really solid off the bench. And I think that long term, he's going to be a guy that is a backup point guard for many years. So I thought he was pretty solid. So I don't think they're going to have him and Trey Burke. Trey Burke will probably go somewhere where there's a little more of an opportunity. But to me, the emphasis is on that 3-and-D spot. If Hardaway ends up leaving, that's a whole new ball game as well. You'll have to replace him there. That's when, with that first round pick, maybe trading up and trying to get Cole Anthony or RJ Hampton might be their 18, trying to get more of a playmaker makes a lot more sense. Or maybe they get DeRozan and replace him. But there's a lot of excitement here with this team, which transitions into where we see them finishing in the future. I mean, they're a playoff team. I mean, they were a playoff team this year. I don't see their team getting any worse to a point where they'd fall out of the playoffs. I mean, if anything, they may move up a few spots, especially depending on what moves they make. But at the worst, they're the 7th seed. I would say at the 6th seed, realistically, because based on what I've read, the Thunder may be entering a complete rebuild mode here. And I just want to find a way to bash the Thunder every episode. So that's the reason I had to bring them up. But no, I mean, based on what I've read, that's why Billy Donovan wanted to leave, is because they said, okay, we want to rebuild. You in or you're out. And Billy Donovan's like, no, I'm out. So I realistically think we could be looking at a Mavericks team that could finish anywhere from 4 to 7, depending on the moves that they make. But with this young core, I mean, when you have a guy like Luka, you need to take advantage of it because you need to win championships with a guy like Luka. You cannot let his talent go to waste. So you don't want to end up being that team that couldn't bring a championship with Luka. And Mark Cuban historically has done what it takes to win. So I think that they'll make the right moves here.
Yeah, and looking forward, I mean, I always like to mention them whenever possible, but they have actually been a popular destination for either Giannis in free agency or via trade. I mean, Giannis is saying all the right things right now, but you know, even as a Bucks fan, I'm not buying it. You know, the whole unfollowing them on social media thing makes me at least something's there. Actually, reading this one trade scenario for the Mavericks, want to get your input on it here. So this person says for Giannis to trade Tim Hardaway, Seth Curry, Dwight Powell, Jalen Brunson, 2 firsts and 2 seconds.
Holy cow!
I think if the Mavericks feel that Kristaps Porzingis and Luka Doncic can be a foundation for a championship team, I don't think Mark Cuban would be afraid to make this trade. No. It sounds like a lot, and it honestly is. But Mark Cuban is a type of guy that would do this trade. Even with not knowing if Giannis would sign there long term, I think Mark Cuban's the type of guy that would go all in if he's given the opportunity. So I'm curious, what do you think about that massive that kind of haul for to pair up Giannis with Luka and KP? Do you think that scenario would be worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it is. I would actually feel a little ripped off, honestly, if I was the Bucks. I mean, a talent like Giannis, and at least you're getting something. But when you think about all those names you just listed, I mean, none of those guys are star players. I mean, a lot of those guys are role players. So if you give up a few picks and some role players for Giannis, I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. And especially in a deal like that, if I'm the Mavericks, I'm wanting to keep Luka and Porzingis. So if there's a way to bring in Jan, I don't care if you have to give up your first round pick for the next 10 years. You're not going to need it, honestly, if you have Giannis, Luka, and Porzingis, who are all still young. So, I mean,
That
those
was like
guys to me are easy.
the roster.
What's that?
Keep Luka and KP and tell the Bucks you can have as many picks and how many ever players you want.
Honestly, at that point, because all those guys you mentioned, you could go into free agency and sign guys to replace them. You could sign veteran guys to come in to play minutes at the 2 and the 3 and at center. There's a ton of veteran centers this year. I mean, a ton. Even Myers Leonard, who's not a sexy name, he's a solid role player, though. So, I mean, there's a lot of names you could bring in. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with. And if you have Luka, Giannis, and Porzingis, veterans are going to want to come play there. They're going to want to try to get a championship. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. I mean, for me personally, anyone that has the opportunity to get Giannis, I'm not doing that unless I can sign him long-term. And I don't know if Giannis wants to just go to a team and sign long-term before he even plays there. I feel like he's the kind of guy that's going to want to feel it out a little bit before he signs long-term. But yeah, I mean, that would be fun to watch, honestly. Luka and Giannis, I mean, we wouldn't even need to debate the two best players because they'd be on the court every night together. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, but as far as them where they're going to finish this next season, I mean, I don't think the Mavericks are really in a position, unfortunately, to get that third star, the pair. So I think they're kind of stuck with making kind of minor improvements to improve their defense or wing depth or whatever they think they need to address. But they're going to be around next year, though. I suspect them to probably I could see them bumping up to sixth possibly, and maybe fifth, depending on what kind of moves they make. But they're gonna be a playoff team next year. They're probably gonna be a very comfortable playoff team, similar to where they were this year. But if you look at it, I mean, it's scary because what else can Luka possibly do in the playoffs? I mean, I don't think him getting better defensively. I mean, to be honest, I don't think him getting that much lot better defensively helps them a ton. That's weird. I mean, obviously it would help. Don't get me wrong, it would help. But in terms of their chances of taking that next step, I don't think Luka playing better on the defensive end does it. So, I don't. Yeah, they're gonna be somewhere in that 6-7 range. No, probably. I think I don't know exactly. I thought that Clippers series. I thought they would have a real chance to the Clippers series, but I mean, if they can get out of the first round next year, I think you could see them kind of get on a roll. But I mean, I think they could beat. I mean, because I'm assuming the Lakers are gonna have LeBron and Anthony Davis next year. So I think next year, I think the Mavericks are playing would beat anybody except for the Lakers. So you could see them make a deep playoff run next year. It's just they don't have the enough firepower to take them over the top.
Yep, I would agree with that. Any other final notes you want to make before I wrap it up?
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay, cool. So we appreciate everybody who was listening today or watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our audio podcast or on YouTube. You'll get a notification anytime we put content up. You can check us out on Facebook. We are the Fantasy Mafia on Facebook, and we also have a group, which is more of a forum. It's called the Fantasy Hotspot. you can go there and talk all things, not only fantasy, but sports in general. So feel free to put your NBA comments there, NFL, not NHL. Nobody likes that.
Nope, nobody likes
And
that.
and MLB you can throw in there as well, and any other sports. I mean, there's been some MMA in the past, so really anything that's on your mind.
And I heard we might start covering cricket soon.
I mean, why not? International love, baby. So we love them all. So put
Yep.
any thoughts you have in the hot spot there. But we appreciate you guys listening. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.